Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for another breakfast chat. And today we are having, you guessed it, bison, rice, and 3 eggs, and cranberry juice. Now, a lot of times people say, well, what all is in there? Well, this is only part of it. The rest is in the Instapot. I'll eat the rest after the video. 1 dry cup of rice, 10 ounces of ground bison, and 3 eggs. With 1.5 cups of water added in the Instapot. Nothing special to it. So today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about calisthenics, because that comes up a lot. And it surprises me, that in any sort of educated strength and conditioning circles, that people treat calisthenics training like it's something special, or that it's something that should be a primary training modality. And I'll be the first to say that I like calisthenics movements. Okay, and people who aren't particularly familiar with what I do, they haven't followed long term, they might think, oh, he's saying that because he's not good at them. No, I used to do 100 chin-ups a day. Back in 2019, I had a period of time for over a couple of months, and I filmed a lot of it, where I was doing 100 bodyweight chin-ups every single day while weighing 220. You guys have seen me do plenty of weighted chins, rep work with 90 pounds, rep work with weighted dips with 110 pounds, weighted glute ham raises. But here's the key thing. Most of these are weighted. They're weighted. And there are some serious limitations with calisthenics as a primary training modality, and they don't really bring anything that special to the table. Here's how I look at them. They're useful training tools. A lot of them are really good exercises. I prescribe a lot of calisthenics type movements to my athletes and lifters. Okay? They use them. Well, why wouldn't they? If they're good tools, and they work into your programming, of course you're going to use them. That's reasonable. But people have this bizarre ideas based around some very, very antiquated ideas that really have no place in a real strength and conditioning world, particularly if you're going to get athletes to their best. Okay, maybe for someone who just wants to get in a little bit of shape and they don't care if they only reach 60% of their potential, maybe it's irrelevant. Okay, maybe it's irrelevant. But in the context of working with athletes, it matters, and it matters a lot. And what do I mean there? People have this idea that they're like, well, because you have to learn to move your body through space, you have to be able to master your own body weight. Really? Unless you weigh 500 pounds, you're not going to get very strong doing that. I don't know, and people will say that and be like, well, that's ridiculous. I consider that to be baseline strength. What is it I consider to be baseline strength? Like a 400 squat, 500 deadlift. Okay, you're not going to build that sort of full body strength off calisthenics. And people have these ideas that you can't build strength where you can move your own body easily with barbell movements. Of course you can. Strength is strength, guys. Look, if you can overhead press 200, bench 300, squat 400, deadlift 500, which is, again, kind of a strength standard that I set out there, irrespective of body weight, height, body fat, whatever. Unless you are very morbidly obese, you're not going to have a lot of problem with most body weight exercises, okay, because you've built an enormous strength base doing that. Someone who can move those weights is not going to be impeded very much by moving around their 180-pound body. And again, people talk about stabilizers. Like, well, they use a lot of stabilizers. Well, what does that even mean? Do you even know what that means? People say that as if it's some mystical, magical phrase. Well, what is a stabilizer? Oh, there's no magical muscles in the body that we call stabilizers. If you're saying that a movement works as a stabilizer and you think it's significant, you should probably know the name of that muscle. Because what you're going to find is that a lot of times these stabilizers are not necessarily worked enough to get the best performance on these movements. They're not going to always be maximally developed. And if anything, sometimes your stabilizers and secondary muscles involved need some extra work to improve the body weight movement. Realistically, we shouldn't be limiting tools. It's silly to limit our tools. If we are trying to get the best that we can possibly be, we need to be using the best tools for the job. Okay? And let's say that you do want to get really good at some of these movements. I don't care whether it's a muscle up, a dip, a chin up, a pull up. You would actually probably be best treating it the way I treat all of my lifters. We take to all of our big movements, we train the weak links. In other words, if your triceps are limiting your dips, you might need to do some extra tricep work. If your biceps are limiting your chin-up strength, the amount of chin-ups you can do or the amount you can weight a chin-up, you might be better off doing some cheat curls. Okay? And the same thing when it comes to all these stabilizers. Well, I'll give you an example of a stabilizer. You want a stabilizer? I'll name a couple of stabilizer muscles on the dip. The biceps and the posterior deltoids. Now, have you ever seen anyone develop massive biceps from doing dips or bench press? Or massive rear delts from doing dips or a bench press? There's stabilizers on it. And they're important stabilizers. In fact, if they're too weak, it limits potential and it can cause injuries. See the issue there? Okay. There's problems. And the same thing when it comes to overall strength. A lot of body weight movements, they'll let you build a lot of upper body strength. You're not going to develop a strong lower body. And what do we need for sports and fitness and athleticism and everything else? And true full body strength, you need legs. Sorry, you're not going to get strong doing a few pistol squats. You're not. And the problem we run into with pistol squats is, that's one of the few things they can come up with for calisthenics, they're more of a test of balance than they are of strength. You end up spending so much time balancing that you oftentimes lose stimulus to the muscles you're trying to get bigger and stronger. And even though people will say, well, you know, it's building a lot of strength in each leg, but it also leaves your core weaker. Let's come back over. What is it that these calisthenics guys always talk about? Stabilizer muscles and support muscles, except that you're taking them all out. When you're doing a pistol squat, you're not loading anything upon all the muscles of your trunk and core. You would get so much more off of a squat or a deadlift. Way more stabilizers. All you're doing is balancing. And that balancing is actually costing you a lot of muscle and strength. And then the issue we run into with a lot of calisthenics is the injury risk. Sorry, I got interrupted there. I had to turn an alarm off. But injury risk from lack of enough movement variation. Okay, this is a big problem. Why do you guys think I rotate through so much stuff in my own training? What do we mean, for examples? If pull-ups and chin-ups are your primary middle and upper back exercises, you're going to have a weak upper back. You're going to have big lats, your posterior delts, upper traps, rhomboids, all of that. That's a lot of your rotator cuff muscles are going to get limited. You're going to be at a higher risk of injury. And I guess you could do a bunch of inverted rows, but at a certain point, your inverted row volume better at least equal or surpass your pull-up and chin-up volume, or you're risking those injuries. And that creates poor shoulder stability. It puts you at risk of shoulder impingement. All sorts of other problems. Same thing if pistol squats are your primary lower body movement, which is ridiculous. It's going to happen to your posterior chain, particularly your hamstrings. What's the number one problem we have with a lot of field athletes? Knee injuries. Weak hamstrings contribute to that, because then you have weak hamstrings and you're slightly quad dominant. You're not going to develop a lot of quad with pistol squats. You're not going to get that strong. But assuming you do, your hamstrings are weak, you have a knee joint stability issue, you're going to be far more likely to get hurt doing anything athletic. Okay? It gets silly at a certain point. There's no reason to limit yourself to these things. And the issue we run into is, again, you're stuck with just your body weight. You have no way to fine-tune everything. You have limited movement patterns. You have less movement patterns available. That's not ideal. Now, let's come over to the point. Are they good movements? Yes. When they have the right place in a program, a lot of calisthenics movements can be fantastic. Again, I use them. I program them. But they don't make sense as a primary training modality. A barbell brings way more to the table. And then if we get to the truth of the matter, variations based on the barbell have dominated elite sports. Okay? Look at the average NFL weight room. Look at the average room for serious MMA fighters, the weight room. Look at what special forces in the military have access to for their weight rooms. You see a whole lot of what you see in my home gym. Specialty bars, chains, bands, right? 6 or 7 or 8 different barbells or more so that we can hit all these different movement patterns. we can change the strength curves with bands and chains. This is the way the real strength and conditioning world has gone. It hasn't gone in the direction of, oh, less equipment, let's use our body weight. It's gone in the direction of being able to develop force and strength through every movement pattern and every strength curve. That is the direction the real strength and conditioning world has gone. So anyone's still talking about calisthenics as if it's a primary training modality, it's not. It doesn't compete. They're just simply a few good, useful exercises in there that can bring a lot to the table as part of a larger program. But they don't deserve their own category. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.